Did you hear it? Look, over there. Do you see the smoke coming? It's the iron horse. I don't like it at all. It's chasing our tribes away. Someone help! The iron horse is coming. Yes, it's time to talk about the Iron Horse, the Transcontinental Railroad. So grab your history book and come aboard. Open your history book to page 117. We are on a trip through the American West back in the 1800s. Nowadays, you don't really get to ride on trains, the old steam engine trains. Oh yes, we have subways, but isn't it exciting to think about riding on a train? Have you ever lined up your chairs in a row and played train? Oh, kind of fun. And I just might send you a train song this week. So keep a watch out for that. All right, if you're not there yet, put me on pause and get your book. If you're there, let's go. Page 117, the American West. Now follow along with me. Building a railroad. For many years, the way to travel to the American West was by wagon train. By 1830, however, a new form of transportation had come to the United States. The railroad. At first, railroads were just short lines between two cities, but soon they stretched from the east all the way to Nebraska. I've got the map behind me, so we'll look at some of those states and where they are in a little bit. People began to dream of a railroad that would connect the east to the west, all the way across the country. It would be a challenge. The railroad tracks would have to be laid across the plains and then over rugged mountains. Turn the page, page 118. Two railroad companies began work on this huge project. It was a race to see who could lay more miles of track. The Union Pacific Railroad started in Nebraska and worked west. The Central Pacific Railroad started in California and worked east. Many people who came to America to find work and a better life were the builders of this great railroad. It was often dangerous work. The men worked through hot summer days and cold, snowy winter days. Their hard work forever changed how people traveled in America. Page 119. As the railroad tracks were being laid, people continued to move and settle westward. Native Americans called the train the Iron Horse. Trains were more powerful and faster than wagons, but the railroad caused problems for the buffalo herds that the Native Americans depended on. Hunting buffalo was an important part of their way of life. Indians used buffalo for food, clothing, and even shelter. As more and more settlers began coming to the West, soldiers and Native Americans fought many Indian wars. Many promises, called treaties, had been made between the Native Americans and the United States during America's growing years. The United States government believed it was buying land from the Indians, but Native Americans did not think of land as property. Many thought they were only sharing their land with the United States, not giving it up. This caused many misunderstandings. Before we turn the page, look back at 118 at this map, and you can see Nebraska, and they were building the line going west. And then from Sacramento, California, they were building the railroad line going east. And they're going to meet where? Meet in the middle in Promontory, Utah. All right, Let's go to page 120. Many Native Americans felt they couldn't trust the settlers anymore, so they began to fight with them. Many people became afraid of Indians. Soldiers began to force Native Americans to move off their land. Many people forgot that there were still Native Americans who were kind and peaceful. This is a sad part of America's history, for America has always been the Native Americans' home. Page 121. It took many years to finish the Great Railroad, but in 1869, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific met in Utah. The railroad was almost finished. Just one more spike was needed. While people cheered, a railroad leader drove a golden spike into the last rail. The railroad was finally finished. People could now cross the United States by train. That's about 3,000 miles. Can you imagine how it changed the way people could travel? The railroad forever changed the American West. Now you see 5 questions on page 121. See if you can write the answers to those. Just short answer. You don't need sentences. And there's one of Laura Ingalls Wilder's books called The Long Winter. Mrs. Kravitz was reading to you Little House on the Prairie. But this book, The Long Winter, talks about how the trains couldn't get through that year and everybody out west was depending on them. And that's one of my favorite books by Laura Ingalls Wilder. She actually was a real pioneer and writing about her true life experiences, even though it's in the fiction section. And we want to take a look at our map. So let's do that. Hold on just a second. We also ought to remember that there have been some great American songs written about the railroad, and the folk song, John Henry, is one of my favorites, so maybe I'll send that one to you sometime this week. Let's look at the map. So they traveled building the railroad from starting in Nebraska and heading this way, and then they started from the west heading east from California and meeting in Utah. And Utah is a really easy state to remember because it looks like a rectangle that's just had a little square corner cut out of it. That's all for today. And maybe you can pretend to be a train, old-time train, steam engine, iron horse engineer. Have a good day. And happy history.